Hey guys.
Hi everybody. Welcome to Mindful Witchery.
I almost forgot.
We've been sitting here having this really stimulating conversation about everything under the sun, which is usually what we do. And I'm so happy because we received the nicest compliment from somebody on our page. I'm not going to mention her name because I don't know if she wants me to. But she mentioned that she loves the fact that we have made witchcraft just a normal topic of conversation.
Attainable.
Yes.
Which is exactly why we're doing this.
Exactly.
So that's so good. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's the one thing that we talked about was we wanted it to feel like you were just sitting down to have tea with somebody and just talking about witchy things and asking about witchy things and telling us what you know and us telling you what we know and just an exchange of ideas. And it was so nice to hear somebody say that that's what we were doing because that was our vision the whole time.
Yes, we made it.
We made it.
All the hard work. But that makes me so happy.
It did. It made me really happy.
Because that's exactly what we would want listening to a podcast.
And she's from Wisconsin, so we know we're getting out there.
Oh, we're just trickling.
Yeah.
We should look at the analytics and see who listens to us. Because mostly it's been New England, which is awesome. Yeah, that's so cool.
I thought that was so neat because who knows who she's going to tell. She might tell a friend, hey, you need to listen to this podcast. But, the interesting thing that it brought up for me was just the idea. Not only it was the reason why we created this podcast in the first place, but also because being a witch can be a very isolating thing. And we've talked about that before. I mean, I know I'm not one of those people who can go out and want to be doing ceremonies with a lot of people or spells with a lot of people or anything like that. I'm more of a singular witch just like you are. I mean, we come together and it makes us comfortable to be together. But as far as big groups, that's not my jam.
No.
But witchcraft can be a bit lonely.
Yeah, even in New England. Actually, when you were talking, I thought of we're very lucky to be living in New England.
Yes.
Because it is more accepted. And I think a lot has to do with popular culture because we live near Salem.
Yes.
Pretty much. And this is where the Salem witch trials happened. And that kind of gives us this privilege to have the comfortability to even talk about it because there are more witches here that are open about it because it's more popularized. So I can totally understand maybe out west or Kansas or Missouri, there's probably less witches who are out of the broom closet, I can imagine.
Yes. And it's hard. It's kind of isolating because you don't have other people to talk to about witchcraft. And it's hard to learn more unless you're learning from a book.
Yeah.
Which I love. There's several books that I can sit here and recommend to people all day long, but it's nothing like learning from a fellow witch.
Definitely.
It's just, there's something about the exchange of ideas that just makes it so real and so beautiful, and it makes you so proud to be a carrier of this type of history. Yeah. As tragic as the history is in a lot of ways, it is still, you are the carrier of something that is so connected to history and so connected to the earth that it makes me very proud. I'm sitting here sporting my pentagram right now that I purchased, and I sport it at work, and I'm not afraid to tell people what I do or who I am or what I do in my spare time. And I've had people message me on Facebook and say, I'm going to ask you a personal question and I hope you don't get offended. Are you a witch? I'm like,
don't you love when conversations start out this way? So I've been thinking, but please don't get offended.
Please don't get offended. And why would I get offended by something like that? I mean, absolutely. Even if I weren't, I'd be proud to say.
It's do you worship Satan?
Yeah, do you worship Satan? But I usually just get, are you a witch? I have a friend who was a witch and you seem like you do the same things that she does.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it helps to really expand people's image of what a witch is, too, because same thing in New England popular culture. People still see the riding a broomstick, which I mean sometimes
absolutely.
We do, but
sometimes,
wearing the black cat. Oh my god! I mean, I guess you can, but
having a black cat is your only familiar.
Yeah, or being part of a coven with robes, naked in the middle of the woods, and
that only happens sometimes.
That's only sometimes.
It's only sometimes
on special occasions. Yeah. But yeah, it's there's so much misconception. And it's not to downplay, this tradition, but sometimes people make it out to be so much more than it actually is when it's actually just a lifestyle.
They make it's almost like they make it so ceremonial, everything we do is a ceremony.
It's a very puritanical
and
way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a very romanticized, I mean, I don't mean to use that word because it's, the puritanical way of looking at it is a lot different, but it is a very romanticized kind of thing where you really people think that everything you do is ceremonial. And I'm the first to tell you, when I wash dishes, it is not a ceremony. And when I take care of my kids, it's typically not a ceremony. Although sometimes I'd like to throw a spell right on them every once in a while to clean their rooms, things like that. But everything we do isn't ceremony. Like, to look at me, or to look at you, or to look at most witches, you would never know that that's what they practiced. I mean, unless you looked and saw a pentagram, or you think, oh, okay, some people wear pentagrams just because they like them.
Yeah, and like, I don't sit and talk about it all day.
No,
right?
I don't
Like,
either.
to me, it's so ingrained in my life that most people don't know unless they listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And this is when I talk about it with you.
That's like I don't typically, I mean, I find myself having more opportunity to talk about it now because people open the conversation, even at work.
That's
People
so
will
great.
open the conversation with me of, oh yeah, you do tarot cards. Are you a witch? You know, sometimes they're just kidding. And when I say yeah, they're kind of like,
oh, wow.
are you a witch?
But
Oh,
that expands their brains.
exactly, because they're thinking,
knowledge.
wait, she doesn't look
Yeah.
like, she's not wearing a robe and a hat and carrying a black cat around in her pocketbook.
We have these ingrained stereotypes.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all kind of
In
follow
everything,
them. But
everybody's marginalized. We like to compartmentalize people.
oh, yeah, totally.
And I don't run around with my witch's hat. It just doesn't occur
Special
to me to do
occasions.
that. Special occasions.
My
exactly.
witch's hat looks like Lydia Dietz' hat in Beetlejuice. I love it. That's my witch's hat. I wear it when I go to Salem.
She's my spirit animal, Lydia Dietz, by the way.
She's the best. And Winona Ryder,
Yes.
perfect.
Just beautiful, and so perfect as Lydia Dietz. So delicate.
Oh,
And
best.
just she was perfect. And I do bust out into Shake Sonora every once in a while.
Oh, of
when I
course.
feel
It's
like
always
it,
on my playlist.
But one of the things that we had just been talking about recently was how people, how they see us in terms of how we relate to things like familiars. And for those of you who don't know what a familiar is an animal, usually a small animal, that you relate to as a witch. They help support you. They help guide you in certain directions. It's a very personal relationship that you have with a specific animal. And I was actually reading where there was a lady not too long, well, I guess, 17th century's old, but she had two miniature horses as her familiars.
Oh, my God.
So I thought that was kind of cute. Most people think of a cat.
Yeah.
But there are people who have
ones.
dogs and hamsters.
Definitely.
Frogs are typical.
Yeah, I would say that's close to being mine. I just love them.
And it's a very personal relationship. It's a very supportive relationship that you have with a familiar. Not every witch has to have a familiar.
No,
though.
I think it's a choice.
Yes.
But also sometimes it's not. So it's like it picks you, and
Yes.
like to be open to it. And before I came here, I was kind of like refreshing some perspectives on familiars and spirit animals. What I realized is, like you were talking about before, people like to box up what things mean. And to me, a familiar is more of something that makes me better, something that I can see myself in, that represents parts of my personality.
Something that reflects
right?
you.
It's like, I hate to say it's like a type of personification, but I mean, to a certain extent it is. Because animals aren't people, but you can see aspects of yourself in an animal. Or you can see aspects of yourself in an animal that you want, that you connect with. Because everything's energy. So are animals. We're very connected to them. Some more than others. I think everybody has different vibes. I can't think of a better
Everybody
word.
has a different energy. And
everybody has a different energy.
Your energy connects. If your energy connects with an animal of sorts, then that animal becomes your familiar. It's your support system. And back in the 1600s, back in Europe, they were considered to be demons. It was an animal that was possessed by a demon. So obviously, I mean, that goes back to the whole, every witch is the wife of the devil, and that kind of thing. So that was their thought back then. But even before that, they were a little more enlightened, and they looked at familiars as, they didn't call them familiars, they called them guardians. And so back before the 1600s, when the witch panic happened, they were just considered to be like a guardian angel, a protector.
Do you think that's where that's more like satanic related stuff, but do you think that's what the black goat represents? Like goats? Because I know in The Witch, the movie, Black Phillip was Satan, right? Wasn't he Black Satan or like a demon or something? I don't remember. Yeah. Like, I wonder where that came from. I actually don't know. Because you often see illustrations of witches with black goats. Like, I don't know where is that popularized?
Where the goat happened, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the horns,
yeah,
the hooves,
yeah,
because Satan was represented by having horns and hooves. And I think that the actual, like the picture of what Satan would look like is a goat.
I think it kind of like merged.
Yeah.
There's certain aspects where it kind of merged. But that's actually, I've never thought about that. That's kind of interesting.
So they were a little more enlightened about it back with the Greeks and the Romans. They just considered people who had these animals to be just a guardian angel, something that guided you when you needed help or assistance with something. It kind of stimulated your ability to work your way through a problem. I mean, familiars, though, are simply that. They are energy from an animal that matches with your own. Sometimes you have a familiar, sometimes you don't. Mine is my cat, Avery. She's obvious. I mean, it became very obvious to me very quickly that she was my familiar because I purchased her for my son for his birthday almost 7 years ago, and she's my cat. She knows, she is the kind of cat that knows when I'm upset about something before I even know it. She will sit beside me on the couch or in a chair, and she'll just tap on me.
That's
almost like she's reassuring me it's going to be okay.
It's going to be fine, Lori.
So she stimulates my thinking too. When I watch her move, I watch her motions.
Yeah.
It stimulates my ability to think through something.
It's like that relationship is so important to notice. Whatever you want to call it, like familiar or spirit animal or whatever, because I know the words get interchanged a lot, but to be aware of the connection that you have with an animal or a group of animals,
and whether that animal is real or just or in your head, in your spirit, because spirit animals are a little bit different. They a spirit animal is actually a guide, where familiars are more a companion. Spirit animals are more of a guide, and you can do all kinds of things to figure out what your spirit animal is. Again, just like familiars, not every person has a spirit animal.
Sometimes they pick you.
Meditation is the very best way to be able to find out who your spirit animal is. If you want to sit down in a quiet place and really connect with your breathing, and at the point where you feel like you are relaxed enough and vulnerable enough, if you want to say, show me yourself, animal spirit, show yourself to me, and you may get a vision of an animal. One of the things I was reading last night, which was interesting, was don't be afraid or don't be disconcerted if your animal has something wrong with it.
Yes.
If you have a horse with 3 legs, or a dog with 3 legs, or a cat with a missing ear, that just means that this relationship with your spirit animal is going to be nurturing in both directions. So it's not something to be concerned about or think that you have bad luck. It's actually even more important because it indicates the intensity of your exchange with the spirit animal. Spirit animals change depending on your needs, because it's when you reach out to the universe for positive energy or help with something, you're in distress, the universe sends you what you need.
Yeah, and too, to bounce off of that, when you do meditate, right, and something comes up for you, and it depends on what you believe in, right? So that could be, the animal that comes up for you could be a manifestation of something that you can't think about, and it showed up as an animal. So it could be some outside source giving you this message, but it could also be yourself. Something that you want, your subconscious mind wants to show you, and it comes up in animal form. And I feel like that's just as important. And that is also, to me, considered a spirit animal. Or a guide, or, whatever you want to call it. And it may not make sense. You could, want to think something happy and be like, oh, my spirit animal is going to be a goldfish. It could be like a snake.
Sure.
Right? But a snake, it's almost like that personification thing. A snake could represent something to you very specific that will help you, guide you to where you need to be. I've had a lot of snakes come up in a lot of my meditation, so that was my example, but I realized that it might have been something outside myself that was showing me these things, but also my relationship with snakes gave me a very specific message that helped to heal me in certain ways, to help me heal myself. Yeah.
So just a little bit of information just about the difference between a familiar and an actual spirit animal. A familiar is actually a physical manifestation. Actually, I was just reading last night too that your familiar could be a human. People say that they have a very close friend who almost mirrors who they are. That your familiar can be a human, apparently.
Interesting. I mean, that makes sense. I've never really thought about it, but
and you can actually with spirit animals are not necessarily physical manifestations. There's something that's brought up through meditation, through mindfulness, It's brought up in the energy of the earth. Yeah. So, it's an interesting kind of thing to think about.
It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it really is.
There's so many different ways, like culturally, to look at it too. And I always try to look at things in the form of energy. So even like, I know for me, when I'm out and about, there's certain animals I see all the time. Like, I'm not even thinking about them. I'm not looking for them. And they just appear. And I think about my friend Beth with this. She's like animal whisperer, where in the way she interprets it, and Beth, I'm so sorry if I get this wrong, but you will be on this podcast someday and you can explain. But animals just appear to her, like come out of the woods dying to die with her type of. It's insane, and I've never met anybody like her. Her energy, who she is, attracts all these animals, and she gets messages and signs. Like if she's thinking about something, all of a sudden out of nowhere a deer will appear, and because of her association, her personification on the deer, she knows what that means, and it will help to guide her. I hope I'm explaining that right, Beth. I'm so sorry. But in that instance, based off her beliefs, like she has like more like shamanic related beliefs with like animals, and I'm like, that totally makes sense.
I was just going to say that about shamanism, has an important role in finding your spirit animal. Dave Ironman, who was here with us a few weeks ago, that's something I would love to discuss with him as well.
I know, I was thinking we need him back on.
Yes, we need Dave back on. He was wonderful.
Wonderful. I have so many more questions. I would love to talk more about spirit animals with him and like kind of look at that perspective. I know when I did a lot of shamanic meditation, animals were always part of it because they represent so much
of who we are. I mean, it just I was reading through, I actually just bought a new set of oracle cards called The Wild Unknown Animal Spirit, and it's a lovely box. I'll have to take a picture. It's a beautiful deck. And it's a gorgeous deck, and it's a deck of animals, and it gives you kind of an interpretation of why you would have chosen that animal. So I'm kind of interested to see what some of those spirit animals mean. They represent a need in you a lot of times. So it's going to be interesting to take a look at those. But yeah, it's a neat concept to think about, and you know, we've talked about how being a witch can be a lonely space to be in sometimes. So a familiar is a great way to kind of not necessarily be as lonely, because when you have a familiar, you really don't look at them as a cat or a dog or a frog. Yeah. They're just another spirit. Yeah. It's another spirit roaming this earth with the same energy that connects with yours. Yeah, I don't even look at my cat as a cat anymore. She's just Avery.
Yeah, Avery. Yeah.
Yeah, she just is. She's this ball of love and light and energy that, you know, understands me. And I think when you have that connection with an animal, whether it's a pet, whether it's a familiar, it just leaves you feeling less lonely about everything.
Definitely.
That's why we have pets, I think. Yeah, I think that's the purpose. That's the intent of having a pet, is to be less lonely and to have a companion. Even though I feel like I have a lot of companions, she's a different kind of companion.
It's different. Like the relationship one has with an animal, whether it's present or just an animal that you connect with, that you keep around your house, I think it's important because it helps you connect with who you are more. Like remind you of who you are more.
And it reminds you of the basic you know, the earth you.
Yeah.
It's so earthy. Yeah, it's so earthy to talk about these things. There's nothing celestial about it. It's all very drawn to the earth.
Yeah, to me it's very real. Like there's no mysticism in this at all.
It's basic.
It's pretty basic. Witch 101.
Witch 101.
But it's okay that you're a witch right now listening to this and you're like freaking out because you're like, oh my God, I don't like animals, or I don't have, like, that's okay. It's okay. Like, is there any type of like fantasy creature that you connect with? Or, you know, it could be a bug. Like it could be a mosquito. Like it doesn't matter, but if it helps you to ground and if it helps sometimes like guide you in like the spirit animal sense, I think it's important. And especially like if an animal comes up that isn't your favorite, pay attention to that too.
And it's not the specific, like you don't have to own an animal for it to be your familiar. I mean, you don't have to have a cat or a dog. I mean, maybe you're just drawn to dogs.
No, the energy generally of dogs.
Keep that around you. You know, buy yourself a charm with a dog on it. Even if you don't have a dog, it doesn't matter. Buy yourself a charm with a dog on it, or pay close attention to when you see dogs. You know, make contact with dogs when you know, always ask a person before you pet their dog. I always tell my kids that. Yeah. But, you know, when you see dogs in the park, if it's okay with the owner, just, you know, give them a pet and make eye contact.
What brings you joy?
That brings you energy. That
Right?
brings that energy from that particular animal to you. So you don't necessarily have to go out and buy a cat tomorrow. Yeah, it's just one of those things that you feel compelled to do what you need to do to be in contact with that animal. So don't think that you have to go out and buy a cat or a dog or a mouse or a hamster.
No. You can just think of them.
Think of them. It brings that energy.
That's how I use them. Like, I love frogs. I love frogs so much, to the point where I think about them and I want to cry because I love them, but they appear to me out of nowhere. And it's been like this my whole life. Like, I'll be walking and all of a sudden I'll stop. I won't be looking down. I'll stop and I'll look down.
And there's a frog.
And there's a frog hopping. And I'm like, it happens enough that I can say that it happens enough.
Yes.
It happens
It's a sign.
all the time, especially in cemeteries, which is what my last one I found. He was so cute. But there's something about them that reminds me of myself in a way, in a weird way. I just think they're so weird and cute. Even like I'm getting all like worked up thinking about them. But I get the same way with dogs too, and baby pigs.
I'm going to sit here and find the dog.
Oh,
or
please
the frog.
do. I'm
Lizards.
so interested. I've never really looked up
Frog.
their
There it
meaning.
is. It is a frog is clearing, cleansing, and healing. The frog and the water element are almost inseparable. The frog spends its first months of life entirely within this healing element of water and then emerges to rest on land. But no matter how earthly the frog becomes, its need for cleansing and rejuvenation is regular. Frogs tend to become overworked and undernourished, so it's vital that such sensitive creatures practice self-care. This card serves as a reminder that water helps us cleanse, forgive, and release. Time to dive in. Frogs aren't meant to carry a heavy load.
It's like you start out in emotional turmoil and then you have to keep going back to the earth to keep drowning you.
There you go.
That's interesting. Have you ever seen that, I believe it's called the rain frog? It's that big black frog that looks grumpy.
Oh, yeah.
Like the black rain frog.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a blob.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And he just like, he has this like little mouth and he looks sad all the time.
Super
They're
sad.
so cute. But I don't think I would ever own a frog, but I like to find them out and about.
We used to have some type of a fire-bellied toad is what we had. We had 2 of them. They killed one another.
Oh, God.
But anyway, sad story.
Toads are great, too.
Yes.
I pretty much feel the same about toads, but in a different way because they're
not as soft and cute.
Yeah. They don't utilize water as much. But I love toads just as much. To me, they're interchangeable. I'll take them both. I don't care.
So, guys, go out there and connect with your animals.
Yeah.
You know, pay attention to what you see most often, because sometimes we just walk right over.
Yeah.
Like I would probably a frog's not my animal, so I probably would not even notice if a frog was near me. But pay close attention to the animals that you see most often. I mean, they can be anything. They can be a cow, it can be a dog, it can be a cat, a hamster, a frog, a toad. You know, it could be anything, but give yourself a moment to just kind of pay attention. Sit outside and maybe see what you see.
Yeah, think about it. Think about it. And if you have one, please let us know what it is. I'd be so
Absolutely.
curious.
I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you about what familiars you have. And if you have a cat or a dog and you just want to kind of maybe make yourself a little closer spiritually to that animal, spend time with it.
Yeah, meditate.
Meditate. Give eye contact. My cat will sit and meditate with me.
Yeah, just sit and stare at them and see how long it'll take. And especially like what comes up for you.
Speaking of animals.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear the dog.
Such a cute little dog. His name is Bao. Hi, Bao.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And if you have any questions or if you just want to comment to us about what your familiar is, if you have one, feel free to make a comment.
What a great way to end this. Bye.
Bye.